What's up, YouTube? Siegfried Lane here, coming with another Genshin video. This time I want to react to the Asian guy stream. I really like this guy. I watch almost all of his videos. He's a lot of fun. And honestly, for this video, I'm not making any money, so I'm honestly just doing this for anyone who does see my content and has not seen his content for some crazy reason, if that's possible. I'm not a big channel, but I more want to get this video out. Mostly because if there's one thing I hate in my personal games, it's racism of any kind. And I don't think racism should ever be allowed. As you can see, I'm not doing a title. I'm not doing the intro screen. I'm just going to do this bare because, again, this isn't for me getting likes or for me getting views. This is more to get this out. And because I 100% agree with this. So I watched up to 4 minutes, but we're going to go and play it. I'm not going to react for the first 4 minutes because I already saw it. But I'm just going to play it for context. But after 4 minutes, it will be new to me. So let's go ahead and get this started. Again, if you don't know this guy, he's a great Genshin YouTuber. He's a great Genshin streamer. Check him out. He's a lot of fun. I really like him. And I think of, honestly, all of the Genshin content creators, I think he is really the most trustworthy and the most honest to go with. With that said, let's go and get this started.
Hey everyone. Different intro, different video.
Oh, 1 second. Let me fix the settings real quick. There we go.
This is going to be a very serious topic, and it's one that, if I'm honest, it pisses me off. It makes me very angry, it makes me very uncomfortable, and it's just made me overall had a pretty horrific morning, and I'm very upset. I'm going to try my best not to get overly emotional, and I will try my best to stay coherent and to the topic, so forgive me if there are a lot of cuts here, because I'm sure, as you can hear in my voice, that my voice is shaking. Let's begin.
Los asiáticos son así. Pues sí, la verdad que sí, porque yo trabajo para chinos, amigos, y son lo peor. O sea, para mí las peores personas del mundo, sin que me perdonen, de verdad, porque no todos son iguales, pero trabajar con chinos es lo peor del mundo. Video. Le puso la gorra el chinito, sí, es un hijo de puta, mándaselo, ese marrano se lo merece totalmente. Es más, me provoca hasta mañana esperar que se conecte y enviarle unos 100 bits y decirle, ¿qué rayos te pasa a ti, chino de mierda?
Now, I personally feel like, yeah, this definitely needs to be thrown out. I mean, crap like this needs to be thrown out. Look, I don't care if you, personally, I don't care if you have an issue with people, but you keep that shit to yourself. You don't broadcast that. If we want to get rid of any forms of, all forms of racism, we need to just stop allowing it to be talked about and stop talking about it. Now, people might argue that, well, if we don't, then they're going to go and talk about it on these other forums, and it's going to stew and grow worse. Dude, that's not true. What happens when you allow racism to be spoken about in public is you say that it's okay. And the fact is, racism should never be okay. Never. If you think racism is okay, because if you say it's not okay, it's going to get worse, just look back at the 1860s, look back at the early 1900s, look back up to the 1960s before the civil rights movements, and you had a 14-year-old African boy who was murdered for whistling at a girl because racism was considered acceptable back then. There is no place for racism in our games. There's no place for racism in society. And those of us, if you are not racist, the last thing you should do is be okay with racism. In reality, if you are honestly not racist, then you should be 100% against racism, and you should be fighting to get rid of racism. And look, I'm going to be honest. I believe in cancel culture, 100%. I believe in cancel culture if it's used to stamp out blatant racism. Things that everybody knows is bad. If somebody comes out and talks about how they murdered somebody, I believe that you should cancel that person. I don't believe that, well, you know, if someone's talking about murdering people, like realistic talking about murdering people, we shouldn't let them talk about it because then they won't do it. No, when they talk about it, they do it. Racism, if you talk about racism, you're saying it's okay. Now, I personally find this somewhat offensive because being racist towards Asians My wife is Japanese. My kids are half Asian. I personally take it offensive because of that. My family is Asian. My family that I'm married to and connected to.
Yesterday, I had the absolute displeasure of reviewing this footage from another Genshin Impact content creator by the name of Kylo Ren, LOL, which I believe stands for League of Legends. And this was just horrific. I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt that somehow this may have been taken out of context, that this was not meant with ill intent, or something was lost in translation when I had first received it. So I ended up sharing this footage with my audience on Twitch, with the Spanish speaking side of it anyway, because there are many of you guys, believe it or not, and bless your souls, because it was very evident that this behavior was unacceptable. Straight up unacceptable and not something to be tolerated. Deep rooted racism. For context, this person, Kylo Ren, wanted to prove to Tenha, who he is directing this hatred at, bear in mind that Tenha is not even Chinese, he is Korean, so the generalization itself is already foul play. Now what happened was, Tenha uploaded a video regarding Kaching. Now,
So, personally, I don't find an issue with accidentally mistaking the races. Mostly because, as a European, of someone of European descent, I can understand if you cannot tell if I was French or British or German or Norwegian. If you can't tell my race, I fully understand that. However, there's a difference between mistaking races with an intent to be racist and just innocently mistaking races, such as not realizing, thinking somebody may be Chinese and not realizing they're Korean, and it in an honest mistake where you're no way using any form of racism at that point. Which honestly I think is probably what upset him so much, is the fact that it was used in a form of a racist attack and not just an innocent mistake.
Now, Kylo Ren wanted to use this video to react to make his own content with, to prove that this title was false and that his Kaching was better. Yeah, that's right, guys. This racial abuse came out over Kaching. Can you believe it? Hey, guess what? She's Chinese, by the way. The game is made by Chinese people, by the way. And the thing is, Tenha used Google Translate to respond to this person on Twitter, gave him his time of the day. He didn't have to do that, but he said, essentially, we're not friends. This is not cool. Please don't do this. And as you can see, he tweeted a formal apology. But this apology means absolutely nothing, because it was followed up by this stream where he's literally bringing it up on stream to then flame, berate, and racially abuse and perpetuate racism in his community. Because as you can see, this is a back and forth thing between his own community.
To be perfectly honest, Tenha could have just let him make the video and then copyright striked him. Which honestly, at this point in time, probably would have been the better thing to do. Because obviously, honestly, I don't like creators who take React videos and try to make money off it. Like, I can get, if you're trying to get views, to use the React videos to get the views up. But my personal opinion, if you make a React video, it should be demonetized. It should be free. And I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that he was more just trying to get money off of somebody else's hard work, which I can see would upset somebody else.
This is something that needs to be stamped out of the Genshin Impact community, and not just Genshin in general. Racism is not okay in any way, shape, or form, ever. It doesn't matter who it is, it's just not acceptable, ever. And for those people who want to silence me, or silence others speaking out over this, being like, I want an escape from the real world. You don't need to bring this to YouTube. Let the storm pass. It's okay. We don't need to talk about it. Shame on you. Shame on you. And the reason I say that is, guys, is staying silent is staying complicit. What does that mean? That means when you see bad behavior, when you see something you would not accept to yourself, your loved ones, your friends, your family, you stay silent. You don't want to get involved. You have the opportunity to do so, to use your voice, but you don't want to get involved. And you're saying, thumbs up. That's okay.
This, by the way, is why I'm doing the react to it. That's the point where I figured I should do a react. Because I 100% agree with him. If you're silent about this and you don't try and say anything, it doesn't matter how small you are, if you have 1 subscriber, or how big you are. If you don't say something, you're complicit. You are, in my opinion, you're just as guilty as the people who are committing it. We've seen several people who saw something, said nothing about it, did nothing about it, and to be honest, they're like, good example, look at World War II. Look at all the Germans who knew what was going on, didn't do it themselves, but were silent about it. Nobody remembers them as being innocent. And that might be an extreme case, but to be honest, I think we need to take every case in life like that. Anytime there's somebody doing something that they shouldn't be doing, we need to take the viewpoint of, am I going to be complicit? Am I going to give them the thumbs up that it's okay? Or am I going to say, no, it's not? And again, it's not about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is the right to say something without being, told you can't say it. It doesn't mean that you have the right to not be offensive. What it means is that I can say something, anything I want about the current U.S. president, as long as it's not a threat. I can say whatever I want about anybody. However, there's a major difference between that. It doesn't mean that I have the right to be offensive. And if you want to take the freedom of speech to the right where anyone can be offensive, we're no longer living in a society, as civilized society as it is. We're living in a society where literally hatred and anger is allowed to breed.
We're going to let that behavior slide. And I want to implore you, especially the Spanish-speaking community, because I know there's a lot of you in Genshin Impact, and I'm very blessed. I am very blessed to have many of you guys watching me. And unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, and I don't have this bridge towards the Spanish-speaking content creators. The bridge is unfortunately, and I don't want to burden you with this responsibility, but the reality is the bridge is you guys, the bilingual, the multilingual people who are part of this very, very worldwide, diverse community who are vastly majority accepting of anyone for their race, their beliefs, whatever. You guys have a very important voice here because there are plenty of content creators who unfortunately stand by this behavior from the Spanish-speaking community that don't want to check this person, that don't want to make it clear to their audience that this mentality, this attitude is not acceptable.
I don't think it's fair to call it out in the Spanish-speaking themselves. I see it in the English-speaking all the time too. Maybe not for Genshin itself, but there's a lot of racism amongst the English-speaking as well. And playing in Japanese servers, I've seen it in Japanese servers as well with Japanese players. Maybe not so much content creators in the Japanese, since I don't watch Japanese content creators, but being as I live in Japan, I have played on the Japanese servers in other games and have experienced racism because I was not Japanese. I was not allowed into groups. This is something that I think, regardless of what your language is, you need to stamp out. You need to not allow. The fact is, as long as there's racism in the world, there is no peace.
And that pisses me off. That pisses me off so, so much because the reality is, guys, on the internet, when something like this happens, give it a week, give it 2 weeks, people will forget and they will move on. And the problem will get worse and worse and worse, and the cycle continues. You can apply this to the internet, you could apply this to real life, you can apply this to history on this unfortunate system that we've been built upon. You think back 100 years. You don't even need to think back 100 years. Think back 50 years. How bad racism was. How bad discrimination was. It's not great today, guys. But the reality is there has been progress. Why? Because people use their voices. People use their privilege. They use their platforms to speak up and support and stand up for their fellow person.
This, again, is 100% correct. I mean, I think it's important to remember that there was a lot of racism against Asians in the U.S. after the coronavirus hit, especially after the leaders of the U.S. decided that they were going to turn around and start making all these racist titles and names for the virus. and it created a real problem. But a big difference that happened this time was that you had a lot of people who were not going to put up with it. I remember a video where a guy shouting Asian racial slurs at an Asian family about the virus, and other people got up. Other people got involved. And he ended up getting fired because people got involved. It wasn't the family. If you're a person being attacked racially, there's not much you can do. If you guys see somebody being attacked racially, and your opinion is, well, it's not my business, the fact is you're the only people that can stop it. No one can stop it if you're the one being racially attacked. You can't make the person see reason or stop it, because the fact is they already see you as less of a person. And that's the sad truth. So, again, 100% right here.
And I implore you guys. I'm sorry. I implore you guys to please speak up. Because without you guys, this is just going to be swept under the rug. And it will just get worse. And worse. And worse. Please stand and speak up in solidarity. Because I know that the majority of you guys do not accept this behavior. And you might be wondering, I'm so sorry. You might be wondering why this chokes me up and makes me so upset. And the simple reason is, I know better than anyone how futile it is to ask for help with this kind of situation. I'm so sorry. I know how futile it is to ask for help, to make a difference. As someone who has been at the scrutiny and the butt of racism for all my life, from all ends of the world, because I'm mixed Asian, guys. And let me tell you what, Chinese and Japanese people, Korean, Thai, whatever, not every one of them gets along. And it's hard. It's hard. Now, I have been blessed and privileged with a platform that has so many wonderful, diverse people. And I have this sense of duty where I would love if we could just stamp out this ignorance, this behavior. And I'm so pissed at myself that I'm getting emotional over this. I'm so mad at myself. But it just pisses me off so much that there are other content creators out there that allow this to slide. They're not saying this is okay. It's out of context. In what universe, in any context, is this acceptable?
So, for those of you who live in the States who watch my content, I'm pretty sure you guys know the term white privilege. And honestly, if you're a Caucasian, you probably have no idea what white privilege really means, especially if you're poor. But this is a good example, okay? If you're a Caucasian and you come from a pure Caucasian family, you've never had anything to do with mixed race or a different race that is in your family, you have never probably dealt with racism at a degree in the States, because the States is predominantly white. The same goes if you're like, if you're in any country, if you're predominantly the race of that country, you're going to deal with racism a lot less than someone who is not. And let's be honest. Chinese get a lot of racism thrown at them due to the fact of the Chinese government and the Chinese companies. I mean, a lot of Chinese mobile games are really nothing but cheap cash grab. That's why I am so impressed with MiHoYo, and I speak so positively about MiHoYo. Because of all the games I see from Chinese companies, their game is 100% amazing. Not to mention, they take a lot of inspiration from Japan, which, again, China and Japan do not have the closest relations. So when a company from China is like, dude, we love this part of Japan and we want to use it, that is a great way to break down racism. Games are the way that we break down racism, and you don't break it down if you allow racism to be said. I have half of my family growing up was half Latino. We looked different. My last name was Lopez, but I was completely white. I would deal with going into job interviews and people were surprised I was white. I dealt with being told how my brother and sister weren't my brother and sister because we weren't the same color. And I did deal with racism just because my parents were not the same race. I dealt with drive-bys in San Bernardino, California because my mom was white, and I dealt with different forms of attacks from the KKK because my dad was a Latino when we moved to Oregon. I dealt with I dealt with school leaders, the adults in schools, racially targeting me because my dad and my sister and my brother were Hispanic. So,
Really? Really? Ask yourself this. If this was you, someone you love, someone you care about, your friend, your family, would you still have this pathetic attitude?
so I'm gonna stop it here. Mostly, my wife is coming home, so I gotta get the kids into bed. But with that said, I would like you guys to come in and check the rest of this video out. I think it's a really good video. Come watch it, give them a like, follow, and support Stamping Out Racism. Siegfried Tulane signing out.